Righty. We are live. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Funke Afolabi Brown. I'm the founder of Restful Sleep MD, and today I am so excited to have a guest who I will be inviting soon, coming up any moment from now. And we're going to be talking about real fun stuff. Hi, there you are.
Hi, Dr. Funke. How are you?
Good. Hi, Dr. Rashmi. It's so good to see you. So I was
Same.
just saying, I'm really excited about this session. I think it's going to be a really fun conversation where we'll be talking about mindfulness and how we can get our teens to sleep better by helping them develop strategies to curb their anxiety, because that's something that's been a huge issue. But before we get started, again, I'm Dr. Funke Afolabi Brown, founder of Restful Sleep MD. I am passionate about helping busy moms and their children prioritize sleep so they could thrive and reach their fullest potential. And Dr. Schramm, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Dr. Rashmi Schramm, and I am a family physician, coach, as well as a meditation teacher. I'm the founder of Optimal Wellness, which is really a coaching group and one-on-one platform where I help busy professionals to ditch guilt and tap into inner peace and joy so they can live more energetic and purposeful lives.
I love it. I love it. So, we've had so many conversations from some time now. And one of the things that I observe, both as a physician, as with the work that I do with busy moms and busy professionals, is the fact that their teens are not sleeping. They can either not get them off their devices, or they're just so wired they have a hard time sleeping. And we do know that anxiety is huge now in our teens, in everyone. But with the pandemic, with so much change, there's a lot of pressure, and that's really creating this anxious teens. And I see that as something that affects their sleep. So I really wanted to get a sense of what's been your experience with that, and why are our teens so anxious?
Yeah, I can speak to it on two different levels. I am the mom of two teens, so I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, and everything that you said is really true. And I love how you mentioned the addition of the pandemic on top of everything else that was already there. So I think even just recognizing that this is a problem can be a huge milestone for really anybody, right? And depending on where you read, some of the stats, there are some studies that are showing us up to 70% of teens self-report feeling anxious more than half the time, and that's a long time. And then also just recognizing the unique challenges of those teenage years as a parent and as a physician to those kids. Like, they look like adults. I look at my kids, right? Like, by the time they're 14, they just look like adults, especially girls. And but they don't act like adults. And so I have to think, okay, like, their brain development, we know this. I mean, it continues until like the tail end is still happening in college. And so just recognizing that we might have to, number one, be more patient with them. Number two, not assume that they're doing things on purpose, I think is one of the key factors to even kind of getting to that place of being able to have a conversation, because we all know that teens naturally want to deviate from what the parents and what authorities say. We all remember being teenagers, and so there's some unique challenges there for sure. So I'm definitely seeing it, in my practice. I'm definitely seeing it at home, and so I know that this is definitely a real issue.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you said that. I think acknowledging it, I feel like, when I grew up, it wasn't really something you talked about much. You just kind of dealt with it. And so, I would like to hear from you. What are some of the impacts, and how does that just feeling of being anxious? I mean, 70% is staggering, really, and we really do need to do something about it. I mean, these are probably not necessarily fully diagnosed, but still it has impact in every area of their lives. So how do you see that impacting their function during the day, sleep, and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's a multitude of issues that can show up, right? And it's not all that different than what happens to us as adults when we feel really anxious. So we start to release, we start to go into that fight or flight mode, right? And so when we're in that sympathetic overdrive, that constant do mode, we tend to see all kinds of physical and mental changes happen, and they can stay that way. So we can have high levels of inflammation in the body, and we can have low levels of some of those really rejuvenating hormones like DHEA, serotonin, dopamine, all of those things. And they can result in kind of like the anxiety or depression in so many ways just perpetuates itself, doesn't it? And so it's a self-perpetuating cycle. And we might get, some of the things that we might start to see are insomnia. And if they're not sleeping well, then guess what? Maybe they're going to go to Starbucks if they're, 17, which is what my 17-year-old does. And she takes the 15-year-old. or you know what? There are plenty of these kids that have these energy drinks like that they're sharing with each other. And so then guess what? If they drink it, to take a final exam, which like my kids are doing today, like then if they drink it at 3 p.m., then they're going to be wired until 1 in the morning, and then it's going to self-perpetuate. And so it can present itself in so many different ways, right? And so they're not able to necessarily concentrate like they could have. They're feeling kind of irritable because they haven't slept, and their higher cognitive functions are actually kind of being hidden from their own view because they end up functioning, in the brain. The physiological changes that happen is we're using mostly large portions of the limbic system, the amygdala, the hypothalamus, because we think we are supposed to survive. And so there's so many different ways it can show up.
That's incredible. And, living in that state continuously, I love what you mentioned about the fact that insomnia then becomes a big issue for them because, one, it's hard for them to really then just like calm their minds. It's hard for them to unwind. And on top of that, you have the caffeine. And then they're going through a stage of life where there's a rapid physical, mental, emotional, brain development. So much is going on, and on top of that, the pressure that the society puts on them, and a lot of, especially for us as health professionals, or as professionals overall, sometimes we have this super high achieving teenagers who want to do it all, and they see us as parents doing so much, and they just feel like they also have to kind of match that in that sense, so I think that really also contributes to them having the symptoms or this difficulty with sleeping. And even the literature says it too, right? It's a bi-directional relationship, right? They can't sleep because they're all just so wired, so stressed, so anxious. They're on caffeine. On top of that, they have a shift in their circadian rhythm, and then on the back end, there's they have to get up to go to school early. So how can we move forward with this? This is why I really wanted to have you just, what are ways we can incorporate? Because I know you do a lot of work with, coaching in terms of mindfulness and meditation. How can we teach our teens this tool, and why do you think it's important?
Yeah, I love this question. So I love teaching about meditation and mindfulness. So one antidote to this anxiety or to this high level of stress, and a really powerful antidote, is to practice mindfulness. And mindfulness is incredibly simple. We just talked about the layers of complexity that the teens are dealing with. Well, guess what? This is like literally the simplest thing. And so it almost seems easy. It's very simple, but it's not easy. So mindfulness in its, kind of distilled definition really is paying attention to this present moment without judgment and with curiosity, right? It sounds really simple, but it can be very difficult to do because the brain, the mind, it wants to go to the conversation we had last time. It wants to go to what is this influencer wearing on Instagram? It wants to go to how am I going to do on this, final? And if I don't do this well, then I might not get into this college, and then my career is down the drain, whatever, right? Like it can go to all these different places. Whereas if we're just in the here and now, a whole host of different things can begin to happen. So that's mindfulness. Meditation also has a lot of different connotations, and it is also incredibly simple. It is just literally going from activity into silence. And meditation is really just a formal practice of mindfulness. And that's really all it is. So there are several different valid types of meditation, and there's so many different ways that we can practice being mindful. And so I can tell you about what I think are some of the most sort of like typically helpful tips as far as practicing mindfulness, because that's what we want, right? We don't want like
Mm,
an esoteric paper that we're talking about. We're talking about, hey, like you've got experience with this, I've got experience with this, what works? And so a lot of times with teens, what doesn't work is forcing them to sit down to meditate. It just isn't going to work. They're going to rebel against that. But we can start to model some of this behavior. So you and I, we run in circles, if we're honest, that there's a lot of toxic productivity in those circles, right? Like if we're not producing something, our time is worthless. And so
mm,
recognizing that that's not even true, that that's some kind of conditioned response that we're working against. And then we model mindfulness. So we model, time without our electronics. We model being outside in nature. We model taking care of ourselves. We model taking care of our bodies and our minds. And so I think it starts there first, because you're right. I mean, I love the idea of the bidirectional thing, because we think the teens don't want to listen to anything we say, but they actually are. They just don't want us to know that they are. And so really, the fastest way is to put down the phone. And if a teen is feeling really anxious and or feeling really overwhelmed, is to just go outside, no matter where you are, right? If it's cold, put on a jacket. Even if it's rainy, you can put on, a rain jacket and just go
mm,
outside. So just the act of literally being anywhere with trees in nature, we know can take us from that fight or flight, that sympathetic, into that parasympathetic response. And it can do that very naturally, especially if somebody's not ready to sit down and notice their breath. And a lot of times they're not. That's a-okay. They'll get there at some point. And so what I like to practice is just this idea of a mindful walk. And you can do it in any
mm,
different way. But one of the things that I teach is notice 5 things. And so, because the mind is automatically going to go to, oh, I got to do this, 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 and this. So notice 5 things, right, that are there right now. So, oh, I see the sky, I see the clouds, I smell the rain from last night, I hear the birds, I hear the truck going by. Like, so once you start to say, what are the 5 things I can notice every time you feel overwhelmed, it just brings you back to this moment. And that's a great way to practice mindfulness. And that's usually really, really, really effective as a way to start to train the mind, because when we're talking about meditation, mindfulness, there's nothing to control. So I like to just go away from the word control, because
mm.
control really connotes to me like a power struggle, like of controlling our thoughts. No, we're just training the mind. We're just training the mind to come back to this present moment. Because when we do that, we turn on that parasympathetic response. And so all the things that I mentioned with, the cortisol and all that gets reversed. And we know 2 major things happen, right? The brain, the physiology starts to change, the blood flow changes. So there's more blood flow in the prefrontal cortex. It gives us more executive functioning. And there's more blood flow into the gut. And even within 2 weeks of practicing something simple, like going outside for a walk and noticing 5 things for 10 minutes a day, we can start to see changes in the neuropeptides, serotonin, dopamine, DHEA. We can start to see changes like that. So those are just an easy way to get us started.
Oh, that's just phenomenal. And this is just from a place of I just love how gracious you are. Like some teens may not be ready to just sit and meditate, but you could start from one place, and that is just really connecting yourself with the outside. And something that I've learned from you also is your mind may drift.
Yeah, it's
Your
okay.
mind may still be in so many different places, but you could just acknowledge that and return to it.
That's
Return to
it.
it. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a term. We just say we just begin again. That's really all it is. We
Mm,
just begin again. We don't need to know why the mind always goes to dinner or whatever it wants to
I
go to.
know.
We just come right back. It's okay.
I know.
And yeah, and
I
Dr.
know.
Johanna's with us. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you just look out the window at the horizon. That's really helpful too. And being near any kind of window can be really, really helpful too. But yeah,
Yeah.
just simplicity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And one of the things that She Is Money had mentioned is that, sometimes us and our teens as well tend to then catastrophize those thoughts. It goes from one thing, and then all of a sudden you find yourself homeless under a bridge. And, and really,
Not
honestly,
just teens, by the way. Plenty of us
no,
adults
no,
do
no,
it
no.
too.
And we see our teens there with us.
Right. Exactly.
but
Exactly.
but really it's really being in this present moment, and really I love the idea of acknowledging 5 things that's around you, and that's something that I think we can start incorporating right now. Another thing I see is how that anxiety also impacts sleep. So, there's those racing thoughts as soon as your head hits the pillow. And one of the things we talk about in sleep is you make sleep associations. We all have these associations. And sometimes, especially for people who are very anxious that have had issues with insomnia, it almost becomes, okay, I'm going to lay on this pillow and start worrying again, this place where I can't sleep. And so, really being able to break that association, I think with mindfulness, I think is an incredible skill. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
I love that. I teach something similar to that. I teach some breath work that they can do right before bed. And so that can, sometimes we're just exhausted and we're going to bed. The
Hmm.
body is exhausted, but the mind, exactly like you said, becomes associated with, I'm going to have 120,000 thoughts here in the next 10 minutes. All of a sudden they start to show up. And then we start to associate that pillow exactly like you said. So I teach some breath work that's really, really powerful, especially if we practice it even for a couple of weeks. Then we start to come right into that restful kind of awareness, which can
Hmm.
help us drift off to sleep. I also think journaling is incredibly powerful, whether it's for adults or teens. I do it personally as well, especially if I feel like I've had a very, very full day emotionally, mentally, if there are things I need to process. Sometimes I don't want to process them when I'm trying to go to sleep. And if I really try to control that, it's going to come right back at me. So just journaling, just stream of consciousness journaling for 10 minutes can be another important and really mindful way to drift off to sleep and to get a more restful sleep as well.
Yeah, yeah, that is incredible. So that will take, this is one of the things I'm very passionate about, is really having a sleep routine as a way to really get yourself ready for sleep. Because sometimes we end up from our laptop and all the emails and just hopping to bed, and sleep just doesn't seem to come. And incorporating some form of mindfulness right before sleep can help promote healthy and restful sleep. Um, in terms of, if we were to pick your top three, say, mindful activities, so you've talked about journaling, you've talked about a walk, which I think is incredibly helpful, especially even before you go to sleep, like not no strenuous activity or exercise, but just a walk in and of itself, if you can, is great. But what would be those top three mindful activities that you can incorporate into your routine?
Yeah, for sure. I love this question. So I actually, I teach a sleep-based meditation. It's called Yoga Nidra. And so that's one of the first things that we go to, especially because a lot of people that come to me have trouble sleeping. So I literally just finished up with a client who was talking about how much clearer her mind has gotten because her sleep has changed so much. So she basically just does her nidras right before sleep, and it gets her into these different alpha, even delta theta is what we've seen in different studies. And you're aware and you're going through a guidance. So I would say find a good meditation if that's possible for you. Guided meditations can be really, really powerful. And I know there are some apps that do that. I have some meditations on my YouTube channel. And so that can be a really powerful way to do this. Learn just one or two breathing techniques can also be a really powerful way to do this. So all we have to do is just sit down, and even in just 5 minutes, if we're noticing our breath and or coming into a different breathing pattern, then we can become more mindful of this moment, and we can prepare our body for sleep for sure. And really journaling, I always go back to journaling for folks. It is way more powerful than we give it credit for. Those would be my top three.
Thank you. This is so good. So find a good meditation practice, breathing techniques, and these don't have to be long, right? They don't
No,
have to
no.
be.
2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Yeah,
Yes. And
that's
thank you, Dr.
awesome.
Johanna. Yes, Dr. Johanna does the yoga nidras with me, and it's really fun. Yeah. And I agree. It was life changing for me too.
Oh, that's awesome. And then the journaling too. You don't have to write a whole manuscript, right? It's just really a brain dump, is what I see it as. Like,
Me too, me too. And you don't need anything fancy. You don't need
mm,
any fancy gadgets, and it's
mm,
really just writing. I know people like to read, and I know there are different associations with reading. I
mm,
generally read, but I just leave something very inspirational to read, and of
mm.
course, just by the tiniest little light, so that
Yeah,
so
yeah,
so
the
that
light.
getting off electronics. I
Yeah,
know that people know about that already. So yes.
yeah. Yeah. All right. This has been phenomenal, right? And so I've heard you mention from here and there about your program and coaching. And so can you just tell us a little bit more about that and how people can work with you.
Yeah, of course. So I do one-on-one work. I teach meditation. I also do coaching and meditation together as a package. I also offer group programs. My current group program is finishing up, and I'm opening up a brand new one actually, and it's coming up here in January, and it's called The Power Within, and it's going to have a whole host of courses, sleep, mindfulness, meditation, mindset, all of that, as well as some live coaching, some guest coaches, and that's going to start in January. Folks can turn up at my website and sign up for the VIP guest list. And my website is optimalwellnessmd.org. And I'd love to hear about the course that you've got right now, Dr. Funke.
Yes, absolutely. So now we've talked a lot about mindfulness in teens, right? As parents, you've watched this session and you're like, yes, I know all this good stuff that could help our teens. How can we get them to understand it? And that's why I created the Sleeping Teens course, which is specifically to for teens want to understand what's going on. We've talked a lot about what changes they're undergoing with their sleep, to understand what happens with their sleep, to understand how their bodies and the physiologic changes they're experiencing can impact their sleep, and also then empower them to take the right to make the right choices towards improving their sleep. And so this is a course, it's lifetime membership, and it also has a workbook where they can journal just before they go to sleep or when they wake up in the morning. And also in addition to that, I also have a sleep diary for them so they can actually objectively track their sleep, because sometimes we have those catastrophizing thoughts about our sleep and be like, oh my God, I'm the worst sleeper. But sometimes when you just log your sleep, you realize, okay, it's not that bad, or oh my goodness, it's pretty bad. I need to work on it. So these are tools that your team can start to use to improve their sleep. And it's something I feel as a parent as well, you can also benefit from. So if you want to do it together with your team, that's helpful as well. And it's on my website. Just to sign up, it's at restfulsleepmd.com/courses. So just head on over.
It sounds
And
amazing.
thanks. This is something that I have had teens come, and sometimes they ask questions like, why is it that when I take caffeine, I still can't sleep at night? I feel more tired. It seems to be basic things, but nobody teaches us in school about this stuff. And so really providing this program and this course whereby they can learn, it's self-paced, to really empower them to really take on their sleep and take on their sleep health, and incorporate mindfulness, I think is just incredible. I'm so excited about it.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been great. Honestly, we've learned so much. I hope this has been helpful for everyone. Thank you so much for Dr. Schramm for coming. And
Thank you.
yeah, so we'll see you. We'll see you next time.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
All
Bye.
right, take care.